The impudence, the audacity, the unmitigated gall of those Knuckleheads of Liberty podcasters, daring to voice opinions outside the mainstream of accepted thought. Listen if you dare. It's angry, it's funny, it's even sometimes sad, but it's always based on freedom and justice, as you will see. Here's our host, Jason McPhee.
Welcome to the Knuckleheads of Liberty. We're coming at you on June 8th, 2022. Somehow survived almost a year and a half of this crazy administration. And that's kind of a milestone for us as well, because our show has actually hit 200 shows now. So that's where we're at. And so that's kind of what we're going to talk about in this show, just sort of how we got here and what are some of the interesting things we've done and maybe some of the interesting things we're thinking about doing in the future. And so with that, let me introduce you to our panel. Today, we actually have our invisible hand, James Just, joining us from behind the scenes. So in our upper left-hand corner, it's our invisible hand, James Just, making all the stuff happen that, that you see in front of you. In our upper right-hand corner, we have Leon, the word Brathwaite, last word in Liberty. He is a retired engineer in the state of California. In our lower left-hand corner, we have our screaming eagle of freedom, Tim Everett. He is a pilot in the state of California. My name's Jason McPhee, and I'll be your host today. So it's episode 200, and it just seems to have just flown by, kind of like all this COVID nonsense, I guess. And that's sort of tied into how we got to be doing what we're doing here. This show sprung out of COVID. Some of us were working on Libertarian Counterpoint. It's a long-running show out of Sacramento. And we had an issue where our studio was shut down, and so we had to start figuring out how to do it remotely. And so we started this podcast, and we didn't call it Knuckleheads of Liberty at first. We just called it James, what did we call it?
It was Libertarian Counterpoint Podcast, LCCP.
Libertarian Counterpoint Podcast. There we go. Yeah, and then it took a while before they realized what knuckleheads we were, and that's when we became the Knuckleheads of Liberty, I guess.
I beg to differ. I thought we were patterned after the fantastic 1930 vintage motorcycle engine developed by Harley Davidson called the Knucklehead. That's why it's in our logo.
We are still Knuckleheads, though. Go ahead.
Oh, we are.
Yeah. Okay. Once we start showing behind the scenes content, the world will see how big of knuckleheads we all really, really are.
Fortunately, we always have bigger knuckleheads to talk about on this show.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. They out knucklehead the knuckleheads.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
But one of the reasons we're doing this, and I guess we could all go around and kind of kick that topic around, but part of it's just the craziness, all of the infringements upon our liberties that we're all exposed to. And I think we're all just a bunch of normal guys who are all kind of like, wow, this is crazy, all the stuff that's been happening to us. Yes. I know that's kind of what's gotten me going. You can't just sit on the sidelines anymore and hope that things are going to get better, because they're clearly not. We've shown the whole GDP debt to GDP ratio, which is like scary levels. We've gone beyond World War II levels, which is just insane. It's over 100%, and our current administration sees no reason to stop now. So just keep going. So I think it's really scary things that we're looking at into the future, and kind of things that, in a libertarian world, where maybe, some social things that might just be choice, where we'd be okay if we saw our neighbor doing it, as long as we're not forced to do it. A lot of us would be okay with it, but we're literally seeing scary social changes as well, just forced down our throats. So yes. What do you guys think about this? Why are you guys doing this show?
Well, I will start, and I tell you, I am doing this show. I want to spread the message of liberty. And everything that I do on this show comes from the very concept that is in one of our founding documents, the Declaration of Independence, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, at the end of this show, you will hear that expression, and you'll also hear what I have added, now and forever, or now and for whatever. But you'll hear my ending. But the
Always.
point is, though, we always and forever exactly is the ending. The point is, though, we must spread the word of liberty, and we must spread the message of liberty. Jason, I'm sure you remember, and James, I'm sure you remember, we started this thing in a studio just before the pandemic took off. I think it was the last Thursday in February of 2020. And after that, we were shut down. And one of you guys, I don't know which one of you guys came up with the idea, maybe we should go online, and we pulled in Tim and we started. And now we are 200 shows later. But the message of liberty is what's important. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness always and forever. We must spread that message. And we must keep on going, maybe for our next 1,000 shows. And I hope we do.
Yeah, that's great, Leon, and that's good motivation right there to have for doing this. But I just thought ran across my mind. If we've done 200 shows, so we do once a week, that's 52 weeks in a year.
Twice a week shows. Tim, we do 2 shows a week.
2 shows a week.
Oh, that's right. All right. What am I thinking? even at. See, I'm a knucklehead. So
there we go.
That they're teaching in the school.
Yeah, so we do 50. There's 52 weeks. We do 2 shows a week. That's 104 shows a year. So we've been doing this around 2 years. Then, right?
Yes, we have been. Yes.
2 years.
2020.
Fast time
yes.
flies.
Yes.
Yeah, and during that time, I spent over 1 month hospitalized and was off the show during that time. And with COVID, I caught the dreaded COVID. For better or for worse. Well, actually, for worse. I don't think how you could make that better.
You had it bad.
Yeah, I had it bad. I had it real bad. Anyway, yeah, what you mentioned, Jason, about the whole debt to GDP ratio being having exceeded the one during and immediately following. Of course, they had to pay for it. World War II is that during World War II, the whole dynamics were different. A lot of that debt was from Americans buying war bonds. So the debt was not held by the central bank. It was not printed money. That was like the stuff we have now. It was actually people digging into their savings and contributing to the war effort. And back in that time leading up to the 1940s, because of the Great Depression, people's savings had gone up. They were on average 25% across the board. So you can imagine, I mean, if you had 25% of your wealth in savings, that you'd be different from most Americans who have maybe a couple of weeks of spending money in their savings, if that. And so the whole dynamics was completely different, not to mention the fact that there was a major world war they had to fight and fund, or well, whether or not they had to, that's debatable, especially as a libertarian, but they funded it. And here we have nothing to show for it other than debt upon debt, paying the interest on the debt, and what little there is right now, well below average numbers on interest rates. You have to, I think, compare the differences not just by the numbers of debt to GDP, but to show the seriousness of it. To do these comparisons to show that, I mean, we're way
hold on too. Well, or just while we're talking about it too, just to add to it, James, if you could show the visual, I just pulled up the CBO's website too, just so people can see what we're talking about here. World War II, that Tim just talking about, and here's where we are today. And what the hell do we have to show for it? I don't know. It just, here we stopped Hitler. Most people, the biggest monster, one of the biggest monsters the world has ever known, here we were before all the wars, and somehow we managed to come down afterwards, because we became more productive, we had more productivity. But, man, it's crazy, and we're just shutting down productivity, and this is all stuff our kids are going to owe hundreds of thousands of dollars a piece, right? That our kids are going to owe, that we technically would have to be responsible for now. And you see the politicians have no intention of paying this off. Therefore, this is all coming down to the kids, right? So it's crazy.
Yeah, well, if you look at that line prior to 1913, there, prior to World War I, and you see how flat it is, and it was kind of, you could extend that way off to the left side of the graph as far as you'd like to see. During that time, we had the Industrial Revolution. So, not that it was funded by government debt or by debt at all. It wasn't. It was funded by hard work. And so, it's even more sobering, at least to me, to think that, we had some of the greatest expansions of standards of living during this time of low debt. Oh my gosh, maybe there's a correlation between low debt and high standards of living. And then, so on and so forth. So I don't know. That's a telling graph, and yeah, it's extremely serious looking to me.
It's funny too, Tim, because by the way, when me and James did the first show that we did for this, we were trying to figure out the electronics, and we were holding up a piece of paper with this graph. And we've gotten a little better since.
Yeah.
Unlike the government, we improve with time.
That's very good. That's very good.
Because we try to get better. Well, that's how we do it, so we'll just keep on doing it. No, that stinks. So we're going to try something different. We're willing to try and fail, and that's kind of our thing.
My entry into all this was being economically hammered back in the last the Great Recession they talk about in the late 2000s, 2006, 7, 8, 9, those years. And so my son had told me about this place on the internet called Mises.org, and they had an article about, at that time, Japan's lost decade. Now it's like lost 30 years, but who's counting? And what caused it, what was behind it? Because at that time I was trying to understand just what hit me upside the head here economically, and why did this happen? And furthermore, who predicted it? Because those are the guys that probably ought to listen to, not these yahoos that never see anything coming. All these people at the central bank, these so-called,
Janet Yahoo Yellen.
Yeah, Janet Yahoo Yellen, and all the people in the past, as Bernanke was the guy during 2008, and so. Oh yeah, of course, his last prediction just prior to the collapse of the real estate market was that it was sound. There was nothing wrong with it. That was his basically his prediction. And so, so when I found out, when I went down the rabbit hole of Mises.org, then of course I got into all the other offshoots of that and started reading and listening and watching old YouTube videos of people predicting this stuff and why, and it's all based on Austrian economics. And so, the whole idea of liberty based on, the non-aggression principle and being against top-down centralized planning and for decentralized planning and utilization of resources. And so that's where we're at now, or where I'm at now, rather.
I think that's why this show is important, honestly, is because we have to spread the message of liberty so that we don't have tyrannical moves like we have seen with the government on this last go around with COVID.
Well, quite frankly, we need everybody, not just the people on this show. Everybody's got to find a way to do something, because if we don't, it's our future, our kids' futures, everybody who is really looking at a lot of people who just aren't skeptical of government consolidation of power. So it's really scary. Well, James,
and that complacency is a real problem. Honestly, it really is. But we haven't heard from James yet, so let him jump in.
I'm here for a whole completely different reason. Jason asked for help, and so in a sense, it's my job. As I'm the county chair, and Libertarian Counterpoint is a Libertarian Party supported organization, right? We pay some of the bills. The party pays some of the bills for that. And so in a sense, it's, as vice chair at the time, it's my job to be engaged in the community, to help community, spread the message, to help the community achieve their goals. And so Jason says, hey, we're talking about doing a podcast, and, hey, let's figure it out. Okay. All right. I'm happy to help you guys figure it out. We had, I had some training from the time on Libertarian Counterpoint. I know Jason had been a host there before. He had been a part-time host. I'd kind of slid into the role as a new permanent host. And, having to learn how to do that show remotely, well, it transfers to this one. So it helped both. It helped both shows. And so for me, I got a chance to help my community, help a friend, help, make 2 new friends. So for me, it's much personal. It's a much more personal. It started as a much more personal experience. I just wanted to help. And,
you got a chance to become a knucklehead too.
That's right. I was always a knucklehead. Just ask my ex-wife. Just saying, I'm always a knucklehead. So
okay. Don't boast, James. Please don't boast.
me and Leon first met on that last show of Counterpoint before the shutdown, and we were literally talking about this type of issue, and then it all happened, and it was like very crazy. And so it's all connected. This whole COVID and the podcast and learning to do things remotely, and then us.
What James, the biggest irony is when we had that show, the point of the discussion is whether or not it's cool to even have quarantines of sick people. And then it turned out, hey, we're not quarantining sick people. We're quarantining everybody.
The whole damn country. Yes.
Yeah. And we call some people essential and some people non-essential. And now we wonder why our society is divided and split and fracturing at the seams. What did you expect to happen? Some of these things were predictable. And it's, we're in a sad spot, so it's, but we've grown, we've learned, and, we're kind of looking towards the future now. And so that's, our progress can be a lesson to the country, right? You can learn, you can pick yourselves up. You can go from holding a piece of paper up to try to get your message across to actually being able to put together a quality show. And, if we can do it, so can the rest of you, right? It's the rest of you, we can clean up the rest of our lives.
Yeah. There you go. And quite frankly, that's a big part of what we're trying to do on this show is to try to interview people who are out there fighting for liberty, who are out there organizing for liberty. And we try and get some of their inputs on their experiences, on the challenges of it, what got them motivated. And so actually, I'm going to take you through a few of our guests right now. So maybe we could get the image up. So some of the guests we've done pretty great. We got Larry Sharp on the show, and Larry's actually running for governor of New York right now. So we're really excited for him. We certainly hope he does well, and he could be a real signal for the whole country if he's able to win that governor spot in New York, because we just seen such lunacy coming out of both there in California. But we haven't just had him. We had Spike Cohen, who was the vice presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party the last time around, and he is just an amazing guy who's out there. He really give a great speech for liberty. If you want to hear that guy talk, I heard him at Freedom Fest, but he's available online in a lot of places. We had our own Kalish Moreau from Hanford, California. So it's an actual place where they've elected some libertarians, which is to their city council, which is extraordinary. In fact, it's a majority libertarian city council, which is pretty amazing. 3 of the 5 city council members there are libertarians. Yes. And actually, we're hoping we got to follow up to see if we can get somebody else from that council on the show as well, just to find out about a little bit about what kind of magic it takes down there to get some reason into
Hey,
government.
what's in the water down there?
Exactly.
Yeah, what's in the water? Good, yes.
Or maybe what's not in the water. Maybe that's the
Exactly.
better.
I guess the Kool-Aid supply from Gavin Newsom hasn't made it there yet. But we've had some others. We had Dennis Pratt, who is from the Free State Project and in New Hampshire, and has been organizing with Pork Fest over there for their big libertarian events. And so those have been fun discussions that we've had with him, and some of the great changes that are happening in New Hampshire. In fact, one of the great things, they just got school choice passed on over there, because the Free State Project, just for anybody who's forgotten or didn't see that show, is they libertarians about 10 so years ago, they sort of identified a small state and said, hey, if we can get enough libertarians in one place, we can get a critical mass so that people can actually see how some of our policies are, or lack of policies in some cases, right, just keep government out of things, are so much better than the heavy hand of government. So those were fun discussions. And recently we had Braver Angels. Rick Hotchner and Barbara Thomas have been on the show, and they were on close to a year ago as well. And some of the great stuff that they're talking about, it's not so much a liberty issue, but it's a free speech issue. I mean, they just want to allow the conversations to happen, to have civil conversations between people with different ideas, which is, what a libertarian marketplace is all about. I mean, that's really what we want to see, is just people being allowed to talk and ideas to openly flow out there, with respect for one another.
I hate the fact that we have to say people should be allowed to talk. That framing is just by itself is just kind of offensive to me. The fact that we have to frame it that way.
Yeah.
Rather than people should just talk. They should be allowed to talk. Why are we even having that kind of? Why are we even having that words together? Allowed to talk.
Tell me this. Why are we even talking about defending free speech, defending the First Amendment? These are things that are fundamental to our existence as Americans. Why are we even talking about we have to defend free speech? I find that so incredible. Is beyond me, if you want the honest truth.
Yeah, no.
But one of the people that, I don't know if you plan to get to it, Jason, but one of the people you didn't put up, I know you couldn't put up everybody, but you didn't put up Sam Paredes.
We're getting to him. We're getting to him.
We're getting to him. Okay, sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Like usual, Leon, with our knucklehead noise patrols and everything, you're a step ahead of us. But yeah, as far as Braver Angels go, it's been great to have them on, and we hope to have them on more in the future to talk about all the rest with promoting speech. As far as Libertarian Counterpoint goes, we had our own Richard Fields on, and Richard Fields has had experience as both a broadcaster and was the Libertarian National Party's press secretary. So, he's literally been the mouthpiece for liberty on a national level, which is pretty cool to get his perspective on the show recently. And we've also had our friend in New York to just tell us what kind of craziness is happening down there, and that's Aaron Comey. We've talked about all the people trying to escape from both New York and LA, which is kind of on parallel with all of those Kurt Russell movies. We're living the dystopia today, but Aaron's been an interesting guest to have, and he has his own show called Escaping the Echo Chamber, which is also really key to some of the craziness of today. The idea that we have these echo chambers that are we can't get any communication going between people, like what Braver Angels is trying to do. And Sam Paredes, who you were just talking about, Leon,
yes.
He's California Gun Owners Association, and they're tied to American Gun Owners Association. And, it's Gun Owners of America and California Gun Owners, I think. But, he's been here to help us understand some of these crazy infringements on the Second Amendment. And,
right.
He's really knowledgeable guy, and he's on the front lines trying to make sure that the government doesn't come and take the guns away like they're doing right now in Canada. Literally, we just turn around, we blink, Canada sees an opportunity for something that happens in the U.S. and immediately decides to start taking their citizens' guns
Tell me
away.
this thing.
So yeah, and they're taking handguns away too, which is kind of weird because it was sort of a rifle thing in these last. I don't know. It's just craziness on that side of the aisle. And finally, we recently talked with Valerie Durham, of an organizer for Freedom Fest, which at least a few of us are probably going to make it to at the end of this, coming up in July.
Yes.
And that's actually how we met some of our last guests that we talked about too. So we're hoping that we'll meet some new people there this year and maybe get some of them on as well. But that's a great place to go hear about some of the things that are happening in Liberty. So that's sort of where we've been. And some of what we're doing, and I guess that segues a little into some of what we're planning to do. So we're hoping to get a show where we interview people at the Freedom Fest coming up, and so that'll be something we can show here, and then hopefully we'll parlay those into some longer interviews with some of those people as well. But that's one of the big plans we have. I'm not sure. You guys want to talk about any other plans that we're thinking about? I know some of you guys are doing some of that invisible handwork behind the scenes. So maybe, some of that.
James and I are doing a lot of work behind the scenes to try to put everything together and get everything under one umbrella. We are forming an organization that will encompass, our Knuckleheads show. We're gonna. There's some other shows like Late Night Love and all these other things and then there's going to be a new segment that we will do one of these days involving me. We will do all those things, but all those things are going on behind the scenes. We are making contacts with other people who are going to help us in terms of the marketing of the show a little better to see if we can, spread the message of liberty, which is our intent. We are doing a whole bunch of stuff. James and I are working together quite closely. Maybe he see too much of me, I guess. I don't know. He may be complaining about that pretty soon. Who knows? But we are doing a lot of things behind the scene. I don't know if James wants to add anything to that.
Well, we're working on spreading the value of human liberty is essentially what we've kind of boiled it down to a few words. And so we're building an organization behind the scenes to support our role in that. And our role is to talk about these things, right? Whether it's from a cultural level, the libertarian values, libertarian philosophy from a cultural level, which is what I do on my show. And then we have the political shows. And, so we're working this from multiple angles. And, you'll see some of that stuff coming up behind the scenes. Like you said, Leon, we're talking about Leon having a last word. So, for a week, we've got some other stuff in the hopper that we're kind of still developing. And so it's an interesting time of growth. We've come a long way from that, as Jason said, that piece of paper, hold that piece of paper up to where we're actually building an organization that can support these kinds of things. And it's been a fun journey to have.
Well, one thing that's been a constant over those 2 years is we're right up against the time. And unfortunately for our invisible hand, that means a little bit of editing afterwards to make this possible to put on our public access. So in order to save him on the editing, I want to say so long and stay free.
Indeed.
And we hope to see you for the next 200.
Indeed. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, always and forever.
Thank you for listening to the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast. Find us on Facebook,